Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And, obviously, we'll be starting, Dr. Lopkin, with the infamous government shutdown around 20 since I've been an adult. But anyway, just your basic cursory overall thoughts to start.
Yeah, a lot is being made of the shutdown.
Always is.
Yeah, always is. The truth of the matter is, I took a look last night, not even on purpose. I was just scrolling through some stuff. And in the last 12 years, we've had 4 shutdowns. So this seems to happen every 3 years or so. Used to happen every 4 to 7 years. So it is speeding up. Now, I don't want to minimize the shutdown because for those who are truly affected, it can be catastrophic. I'm talking.
And who would be those people? I mean, an honest question. I don't know.
I'm talking about military people because
Okay.
If you're in the
get their pay, yeah.
Right, if you're in the military, you're not getting paid now. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck like most of the country is, that's going to be a hardship. Other government workers can be in the same situation depending on the department. Not all departments are shut down. There are departments that are considered essential services. Social Security is an essential service. Medicare is an essential service. Law enforcement, I'm not sure. I think some of it is, some of it isn't. So it does get a little convoluted. However, past the short-term pain, and I was actually talking to somebody whose husband is a general in the military, who's not getting paid, by the way. And she had said the longest they've ever had to go during a shutdown was about 43 days. Now, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, that can be catastrophic.
Yes, it can. Especially if you're tied up in terms of you're maxed out on credit, that could be a real problem.
Now, in the bigger picture, however, most of these folks, in the past, all of them, have been furloughed rather than fired. So they got their back pay. And there's always a lot made, what's it going to do to the economy? Generally, 6 months after a shutdown, our economy is actually stronger than it is when it went into the shutdown. So the long term, there aren't a lot of consequences. The consequences are for those suffering short term. This time, however, could be very, very different.
Good. Yeah, I like that. Go ahead.
Trump has already announced that he is not in favor of furloughing people. He is going to make permanent cuts. He asked all of the government agencies to put together downsizing plans in case this happened, because he is going to cut the federal workforce, not furlough and then get them back pay. Fire them.
Okay, I need to interrupt because that's what I thought you would be talking about, and I think that's what makes this one so much different. Because to put it in perspective, if this was just if this was not Trump, we would talk about it, but it would just be mentioning, to let everyone know we are cognizant of the world. But this is definitely unique. So what you've said, obviously will have a huge impact on the government going forward, but it also plays very uniquely into the political arena. Just take, for instance, the meme, the trope of Jeffries and Schumer. Just effing with them, pushing their buttons.
I mean, politically, first of all, despite what Schumer and Jeffries have been claiming, the shutdown falls squarely on the Democrats' head. The Republicans are at fault for coming to the point where they had to put yet another continuing resolution out. And this is why Rand Paul stood as the only Republican that did not vote for the continuing resolution, because he has said time and time again, Congress has one job, and it's to create a budget, and they haven't done it in decades. They keep kicking the can down the road with these continuing resolutions, and he is determined to turn that around. So he did not support the continuing resolution. 3 Democrats did. Um, Democratic senators. I don't know. I don't know that any of them supported it in the House, but they didn't need their votes in the House. Um, the problem with the continuing resolution is that it's not a budget. It is just kicking the can down the road. And the Republicans should have gotten their butts into gear and actually done their job to put together a budget. Had they done that, the odds are even Rand Paul would have signed on. They might have been able to swing a couple of Democratic votes, and this wouldn't have happened. However, the continuing resolution is literally keeping the spending plan put together during the Biden administration. So this was a Democratic plan, and the Democrats refused to support it simply because they don't like Trump.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's also the political environment that we're in on both sides. I mean, like we talked about years ago, you could have a bill that they should have gold dropped from airplanes, and they would say no, that make people too rich, depending on the party in power.
Right.
So that's the political climate we're in. I do think, and you talk about the Democratic budget, okay, that they're going against. I don't know how and why this is the case, but the overwhelming majority of people polled are blaming the Democrats. Usually it's the people in power. That's news to me, or new to me, I should say.
It is a very new situation. And last week, the New York Times Siena poll actually showed Trump ticking upwards in his approval ratings. So that, I mean, I'm sure those two things are tied together. And let's face it, most people expected the government to shut down because the two parties are so dysfunctional at this point that it seems almost impossible to get them to work together.
I definitely agree with that, but it's also to your original point. Back, 1990s, I think it was 94, government shut. Even I was like, whoa, what's going to happen?
Right.
I think that boogeyman has disappeared. I mean, it's like big yawn. Unless you're in the military, I get it. But if you're the average person on the street, an accountant working for the XYZ company or a teacher or whatever, you're not freaking out. 30 years ago, you're like, whoa. So it's lost its relevancy and resonance.
It has, and I think even the scare tactics have completely failed because we've had so many of these that 90% of the populace knows what to expect. So unless you're a government worker, I mean, in previous shutdowns or previous threats of a shutdown, one of the Democrats' favorite tropes to scare the public was, well, the folks on Social Security aren't going to get their retirement benefits. If you're on disability, you won't be getting your disability payments. If you're on Medicare, you won't be able to see your doctor. And now most of the folks in those situations know that's not true. These are essential services and they continue whether the government shuts down or not. So the scare tactics have completely failed at this point.
Yes, and I also think you're a marketing aficionado. Sometimes it's simple, Dr. Lopkin, even though you're the esteemed doctor. Sometimes it's messaging, and I think that's one of the big Democratic problems, especially in their leaderships. Jeffries and Schumer, just limp biscuits, just dregs.
Yeah,
I mean, it just doesn't resonate. Trump comes across as in command, basically in charge, and these guys look like a bunch of nebbishes.
Yeah, I think
especially Schumer.
Yeah, it's not so much a messaging problem I mean, because that's what the Democrats keep saying. It's a problem with our messaging. People just don't understand. It's like, no, the problem isn't the way they're messaging. The problem is they have no viable message at this point.
Oh, no, I agree with that overall, but I'm talking about this particular shutdown. They come out to address the issue. They're just, Jeffries looks like he's less than a Mensa candidate. And Schumer, his credibility is like more south than the South Pole. So
Yeah.
no one believes his shit. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, after 10 years of bullshit, people, I don't care who you are, like, okay, enough, Chuck. Just shut up.
Yeah, it was really interesting this morning. I logged on to X to make a few business posts. And the first thing I thought was something had gone wrong with the app or something was wrong with my iPad, because all I saw was one message over and over and over again. And when I took a closer look, it wasn't a problem. People were posting the same message over and over, and it was simply two words: Schumer shutdown.
Wow. Didn't see that, but yeah, that would correlate to and support, in terms of the polling.
Yes.
And I do think I think it is, if you had someone else, Billy Smith, Nancy Johnson, in his position, I think he's damaged goods. And I think he might be on the political extinction list very quickly.
It's very possible. We are seeing a lot of the older generation of Democrats either step down or be primaried. So Schumer could very well, I mean, I don't want to say he wouldn't be next because he doesn't come up again for election till 2029. So he's safe for a while unless he decides to step down. But what makes this really interesting and just highlights what an incredibly bad decision this was by the Democrats. If they had voted to pass the continuing resolution, Congress would still have had the power of the purse over the federal agencies. So they would have had a bargaining chip to deal with the Republicans, to deal with Trump. Because they failed to do this, and we are now in government shutdown, all of that control falls to Donald Trump. So now, where Congress has been saying, oh, well, he doesn't have the right to fire people, now he definitively does. He can make
that goes into Jeffries being a Mensa candidate.
Right. Sorry. He can now make the massive Doge cuts that he has been talking about, that he had to get through Congress before, but he can make massive cuts to the executive branch. All of the federal agencies, they can fire people now at will because Congress gave away their ability to fight back. All because they didn't want it. All because they didn't want Trump to be able to say he kept the government open.
And what do you think? But I believe most people, if it does happen in terms of massive layoffs, I think the general populace would be supportive of it. And again, you're going to have Schumer and Jeffries crying about it. I think most people are like, yeah, it's bloated.
The general public would be in favor of it. We saw this in poll after poll when Doge was in the headlines. I mean, 80% of the population was in favor of cutting the federal budget and cutting the federal workforce. So there's really no downside for Trump to do it, except the radicals on the left will just yell about Trump, go into their Trump derangement syndrome.
Killing babies are dying, the whole thing. I think that's starting to get old too. It really is. Like, again, Crockett and AOC, they're preaching to their choir, but these people are certifiably insane anyway, so they're never going to change. So who cares?
Yeah, they're preaching to their own choir, but most people are starting to realize, oh, wait a minute. The so-called Medicaid cuts and Medicare cuts that were put in are not actually cuts. They're workforce requirements, almost identical to the ones that Bill Clinton put in back in the 90s that Obama got rid of.
he would be forced out immediately, Bill Clinton. That Democratic Party, that ship has sailed, and I don't know if it's ever going to be in another harbor again. Um, so you look at the political landscape, very interesting. The New Jersey gubernatorial race is essentially deadlocked, which usually favors Republicans, and the news for the Democratic candidate is continuously getting less favorable. What are the implications, if any, if New Jersey flips red?
If New Jersey flips red, it's just going to put even more pressure on the Democrats during the midterms. And they're already starting to see quite a lot of pressure because right now, Texas has redistricted, giving a potential 4 more seats in Congress to the Republicans. Missouri and Mississippi also both redistricted, each giving another seat to the Republicans. California is swearing up and down they're going to gerrymander it to replace those seats in Texas, but they're gerrymandered so badly in favor of the Democrats, there's not a lot more they can do to cut Republican seats.
Plus, it's a constitutional issue in California, and I'm not so sure the electorate's going to go for that. I think there's an undercurrent. Hold on. I think there's an undercurrent of increasing disfavor, even though, yes, the Democrats are overwhelmingly in control of California. But I think Gavin, thanks to him and the rest of the idiots, I think a lot of people are less than enamored to the leadership because it's their own ass, essentially.
Oh, yes. Let's not forget that every district in California in 2024 shifted to the right. So even though the right wasn't able to take the majority in most of these districts, Democrats lost ground in every single district. So that is going to be a major factor in the midterm elections next year. And we've also got what I'm referring to now as the X factor, which is the backlash, but more extremism from those with Trump derangement syndrome. Because we saw over the past 3 weeks, Rosie O'Donnell was great. She was on MSNBC complaining.
She's clinically insane, by the way. Yes. She's clinically insane. She needs to be hospitalized.
She's was insane. Complaining that her therapist didn't understand her Trump derangement syndrome because her therapist was literally telling her that, no, this is you. It is not a problem with Trump or the people. This is you, and we have to deal with this. We also saw massive on TikTok, the left-wing wackos, after Donald Trump made the announcement about the findings that pregnant women taking Tylenol had contributed to the rise in autism rates. Now, the folks on TikTok decided, well, it's Trump saying it. It must not be true. So they started chugging Tylenol. As a result...
Beautiful. Yes. That's excellent for your liver, by the way. No, it's fantastic for your liver.
Hospitals around the country are reporting increased cases of liver failure from these people. Now,
geniuses, especially if you had a couple of Chardonnays with that being a liberal, that's excellent for your liver. Most doctors highly recommend that.
Now, of course, all of these folks that were yelling about, oh, Trump doesn't know what he's talking about, didn't actually listen to the announcement or look at the reports that HHS was looking at. The research that was quoted was done by Johns Hopkins University, Yale University, and Harvard University. Not exactly right-wing bastions.
No.
The Johns
But it all
Hopkins
goes
study.
into the Trump. If it was a Democrat, if it was the Biden administration, it'd be hailed as again. And if the Republicans were complaining, they would say Republicans don't know science. Yeah, it's just. And anyone who's against it, and you're never going to get it perfect, but make America healthy again. It's in dire need. You know, I have an app to go real quick. It's a very good app, okay? And basically, what it is, you can take a UPC code, scan it, and it'll tell you from 0 to 100, 0 being awful, how good it is for you. A lot of things great. Other things you're like, holy cow, like cancer. I mean, yeah. So it's
Oh, yeah.
overdue, and I do think it's funny the chugging. And who would think? What rational person would think it's a great idea to chug, anything, Tylenol, aspirin? Like, what are you, like, stupid? That's a rhetorical question.
Yeah. And of course, these folks don't have any historical knowledge, but the Johns Hopkins study actually came out in 2019. Same year, the makers of Tylenol came out and said they never recommend pregnant women taking Tylenol. So the company themselves came out in 2019 saying pregnant women shouldn't take this. But because Trump made the announcement, Trump derangement syndrome kicked in, and TikTok, we're going to prove them wrong. Now hospitals are reporting increasing numbers of liver failure, liver disease, and this is only in the past few weeks that they were chugging it. That's how quickly the liver responded.
Actually, you know something? I think Trump should push their buttons and have RFK Jr. come out with an announcement that cyanide is dangerous.
There was a
There you go.
There was a post on social media from the Babylon Bee that says Trump announces that chugging Windex is unhealthy. Democrats respond by chugging Windex.
That was my entire point.
Yes.
There you go. But getting back to New Jersey, it was within 6 points, if I'm correct. It's close enough with Trump flipping it. I think this would send a shivers, not that they're not already shaking, down the Democratic spine, and we'll see how that works. The momentum is definitely with the Republican candidate, but we'll see how it goes. Now, you have an update on the Gaza situation. What can you tell our listeners?
Yes, as I'm sure most of our listeners know, on Monday, Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu had announced a 20-point plan for peace. Last week, while the UN was in New York, Trump actually had side meetings with a number of the Arab nations, and they are all for this plan. This morning, actually late yesterday, it was announced the Palestinian government, not Hamas, the Palestinian government actually said they are in favor of this, but they are going to be giving their answer to the Egyptian and Qatari representatives as early as today. But even the Palestinians in Gaza are in favor of this peace plan. So there is an actual possibility that Trump has just ended the war.
Would Rosie go actually literally into a hospital then? Or a straitjacket?
Would not surprise me. But
to be honest with you, because my life isn't that exciting, I really can't get enough of it. And this is the truth. It used to be like hard rock, but those days are over. I really can't get enough of the Rosie updates. We haven't seen Hunter lately. Uncle Joe, can't get enough of him, and Kamala, the four horsemen, the greatest of all time. Must see TV.
I mean, talking about Kamala's book and her book tour are decimating the Democratic Party. It is tearing them apart because she is actually blaming everybody except herself, of course, for her failed presidential bid. And she
Do
is.
you know? Wait a second. Do you know that it was the closest election in the 21st century? I didn't know if you knew that.
According to Harris,
Kidding.
it was. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. What the
Yeah.
hell is she drinking?
Yeah.
I already know the answer. Don't you have
But
to? Yeah,
the point I'm making is that she is actually making a bigger rift in the Democratic Party between what used to be the mainstream Democratic Party and the radical left, with her falling squarely on the radical left side. Now, if the Republicans take New Jersey, and if Mondavi loses the New York mayoral election, which now is a distinct possibility because Eric Adams has pulled out of the race. So
yep.
that's going to consolidate anti-Mondavi support. We could be finally seeing what used to be the mainstream Democratic Party starting to come back.
Well, we certainly hope so, because I think the country needs a functional two-party system, two-party government, and we don't have one at this particular point in time. Yes, we'll see how that goes, and I think, and the other thing, just last thing about Kamala, how do you say politically or slash career over? Oh, not that it was going anywhere anyway, gone.
Yeah,
And in fact, like, I was really serious when she shows up at Howard University, a couple too many cocktails with the ridiculous looking out. She looks, you just remind, and I do agree with JD Vance. Every minute spent listening to her, you seem like you become dumber. The dumbest candidate I have ever seen, and that's not posturing, that's the truth that I've ever seen. Dumber than rocks.
The worst thing she could have done for her political career was to come out with this book. She was not a rock star with the fundraisers to begin with. A lot of them had already said they will never donate to another campaign of hers again. And the DNC,
I don't know why. Do you know why? Why would they think that, Doctor?
And the
DNC, money management.
Yes, and the DNC is still trying to raise funds to pay off her debt. So
nice.
she was not in good shape with fundraisers anyway. Now she's alienated even more of the Democratic Party base. So she's basically shot herself in the foot. She's never running for anything again. You know, I mean, she might.
What's wrong with the Democrats? What's wrong with the Democrats? You have Uncle Joe, bankrupt essentially, and Kamala blowing them $1.5 billion. I don't know. Maybe they shouldn't be in charge with anything remotely resembling a budget, but that's just my humble opinion.
Well, you know, maybe when Biden and Harris were in power, they really should have put Nancy Pelosi in charge of the Treasury. I mean, she seems to be rolling in it.
That's an excellent point. Just drop a couple trillion in her portfolio, and the debt is solved maybe in a month.
Right.
Yeah, no doubt. And you can throw in Blumenthal as well, another socialist who destroys any kind of Wall Street hedge fund. I don't know how that happens. But now, last week we talked about the unintended consequences of the NBA and pretty much its irrelevancy. I actually think the NFL is an example of that. You take being older than you are, I remember at least, the 70s and going back, I like football history and sports history, the 60s, and it took off. And the big game was 1958. They say the greatest game of all time. But anyway, so you had the NFL just becoming a juggernaut, replacing Major League Baseball as the number one sport in America by the mid 70s. And again, all these suits, Goodell and others, effing it up, black national anthem. Really, you really need this 5 years after George Floyd? Stop hate. Oh, no, really. Promote hate, genius, in the end zones. And then the last final straw, after, I can't tell you the last 5 years of the halftime show, you went from Paul McCartney, Rolling Stones, Springsteen, what have you, to Bad Bunny, Double B. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Who's, I think, a transgender. No, transgender, I think I guess it's, I don't know, whatever it is, also America hating. Nice. That's going to be the biggest flush heard around the world when 100 million Americans go to the toilet.
Well, maybe that's the NFL's plan. They don't want people walking out on the game. They want them seeing all the commercials because that's where they make their money. So they create the worst possible halftime show they can imagine. This way, they give everybody a break to go to the kitchen, make more snacks, go to the bathroom because nobody really wants to watch this. Now, I said
You know
this
something, though? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I said this to you before we started recording. Prior to being announced as the halftime show, I'd never even heard of Bad Bunny.
Do you know what it sounds like? It sounds like we before the show, video games. But the more I think about it, it seems more like a child's candy. Oh, mommy, can I have Bad Bunny? Sure, you did well on the spelling bee. Unbelievable. But I actually think when I talked about the big flush, I actually might. Depends how inebriated I am. If I've had a couple of beers, I might stick around at least for the first 5 minutes because this could be an all-time worst ever. Bad Bunny. Wow.
It could be. I mean, there have been some truly horrible halftime shows
over the last
in the
5
past.
years.
Even going back a little further than that, but I honestly think, we've talked about this in the past. I like to watch old episodes of Johnny Carson. And one of the episodes that I happened to see recently was Keenan Ivory Wayans talking about the fact that they were going to be doing a special episode of In Living Color that started at the beginning of halftime and just went through halftime. It was their own halftime. Fox did not have the Super Bowl that year. It was on another network. But they were going to counter program with a special episode of In Living Color that just went live, starting when halftime started, ending when halftime ended. And I think, you know what? Given how bad these halftime shows are, something like that is a golden opportunity for the other networks.
That is an excellent. That is really, and that's no joke. You nailed it. Because it's gotten so crappy, especially if you're targeting people with an IQ above 80. Yeah, develop your own content. 100%. Well done as always. Well, speaking of well done, another well done show, Doctor, and our listeners can give their input, can't they?
Yes, let's hear what you want to talk about. What do you think of the government shutdown? Does it concern you? Is it a no-brainer? Is it just a yawn? What do you think of the Super Bowl shows? What other issues do you want us to delve into? Let us know by going to xvadio.com/connect. You can also go to the Carnivore Radio Facebook page, messages there. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Before we go, I just got a text. Looks like Bad Bunny's going to be our guest next week. Just kidding. See you next week, Dr. Lopkin.
We'll see you then.